G'day and welcome to Reality Check. I'm your host, Ross Coulthart. Now, Reality Check veterans will know that quite a few years ago, I did a story about a guy in Texas called Jim Marlin, who had a very mysterious metallic sphere. It was a strange metal ball that apparently moved under its own power. We couldn't explain anything about this object, and our efforts to investigate it were largely frustrated because, for good reason, Jim didn't want us cutting it in half to have a look what's inside it. But what it twigged me to was a long-standing international mystery. The mystery of numerous, thousands of metallic spheres seen all over the world. Some of them appear as just orbs, glowing orbs. Some of them seem metallic. And I've long wondered and pondered what these unidentified, anomalous objects are. Well, today I'm bringing in a guy who thinks he has a hypothesis, an explanation that might just explain the phenomenon. Patrick Jackson's a long-time friend of mine. We've been talking for years about the metallic spheres, and he is joining us today from the United Kingdom, from Britain, and he's going to talk to us about his extraordinary investigations into what he calls the Sphere Network. I want to tell you about a great new sponsor of Reality Check, ExpressVPN. I've actually used ExpressVPN for quite a few years. It's one of several VPNs I use because I worry about my data. I'm always panicking and paranoid about making sure I protect the security of my computer communications. And I'll tell you the reason why. Many years ago, I did a story about how easy it is to hack communications. An ex-criminal took me to Sydney Airport and showed me how, using a thing called a packet sniffer, he could sit in an airport lounge and watch as businessmen typed in their credit card details, their bank account sign-in, confidential messages to their work, to their employer, farewell messages to their wives in the 10 or 15 minutes before they hopped on a plane. It's something we all do without thinking, logging into a Wi-Fi at an airport and not thinking about the consequences. It completely changed the way I operate. It taught me that communications via computers and phones are not secure, particularly on public Wi-Fi. It's absolutely essential you use a VPN, and I use ExpressVPN myself. I can highly recommend it. It's a very useful service. And of course, if you do want to watch TV shows on another country in another part of the world, I would never advise that, but these VPNs can actually be quite useful for that purpose as well. They can help you connect to any network in an encrypted way when you're in a cafe, a hotel, an airport lounge. Think of the number of times you log on with your phone or computer without thinking, tapping into a public Wi-Fi. Believe it or not, I've seen it. I've seen how there are criminals who are waiting for you to do just that. They get in and they can steal your credit card data, your bank account login, confidential work information, and before you know where you are, your privacy is completely flouted and lost online. It doesn't take much to learn how to use these VPNs. I was initially intimidated about using them, and then I realized how easy they are to use. The best ones, like ExpressVPN, are literally just a click and you're away. And if you want to spend a little bit more money, you can get your own individualized IP, which is very special for certain reasons that you can ask them about. What ExpressVPN does is it stops hackers from stealing your data by creating a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. I would go so far as to say it's an absolutely essential tool. And if you're someone like me, a journalist who's trying to protect sources, I use VPNs to access what's called the dark web using a product called Tor, T-O-R. And this is my way of protecting the confidentiality of sources. A VPN is essentially an encrypted tunnel that gets me on to the dark web and allows me to communicate with people in ways that can't be tracked by certain three-letter agencies. It's an absolutely essential journalistic tool. Now, if you do want to get ExpressVPN, you can secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/Ross. That's Express, expressvpn.com/Ross to find out how you can get up to 4 extra months. expressvpn.com/Ross. Don't miss out. Welcome to Reality Check, Patrick.
Hi there, nice to be here.
So, Patrick, let's start with you as a kid. I love your early stories as a child. You had about 12 to 16 experiences as a child with UAPs. Let's talk about one of the earliest. You were a little boy, I think you were about 8 or 9 years old, and you saw an object. Take me away.
Oh, yeah. It was basically when I was at school, and we used to play out in the fields, and it was like a hot summer's day around June, July time. And I just looked up in the sky, and there was like a pyramid-shaped object hovering above the ground and spinning. And I just stood and watched it, and just spinning in the air. And it was moving around like this. It was sort of juddering around, which is actually the same as what superconductors do. So it's kind of interesting. I was just watching it for like 20 minutes, and it was just me, and everyone else was playing around me, and I was just watching this thing. And that was just one in a whole long line of objects that I've seen over the years.
So there's another one that you described. You were in a den with a friend of yours, and this weird white figure appeared inside your playhouse.
Yeah, so that was a funny one. Like, I was playing on the climbing frame, and we had a den that was like, because I live in the country, and we had like a den that was by a big ditch. It was all completely enclosed in by sticks and thorns and everything like that, and you couldn't get in. There's only one way in and one way out. And we were on the climbing frame, and we saw this guy walk out, and he was literally like 5'10", completely white. And I shouted at him, thinking, get out of our den, kind of thing. And he looked at me, and there was no face. It was just a wall of white. And I just no, I was just like, get out of my den, So I just jumped off and started running towards him, and he dived back inside and got inside. We were literally inside the den within 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and nothing there, completely gone.
Now, the other one I quite like is the Mad Monk story. I'm coming to this for a purpose. Tell me the Mad Monk story. You were a bit older. You were sitting outside a pub. What did you see?
Yeah, that was great. So I was sitting. It was about 7 o'clock, summer's day kind of thing, and I was sitting there on a swing, waiting for the local social club to open, and I just happened to look left, across the field, and there was this guy standing in the middle of the playing field. And I thought it was like one of the local, people acting up a bit. So I started shouting at him, and he wouldn't move. It was like a statue in the middle of the field. And this was only like 30, 40 feet from me. It was fairly close. So I had a laser pointer at the time. I got it out, and I put the laser on the ground, and it went up his leg, up on his chest, onto his face. But he had like a hood up. And the laser reflected off the where his face should be. But there was no detail. It was like hitting a black hole. You saw like the laser, but it was much dimmer, and it was just flat. So I was like doing this, and in the end, I just got up and I started walking towards it, and I got within 10, 15 feet, and it just disappeared. And I was like, what?
At least two of those incidents then that you described to me just now are what you would call classic poltergeist ghosts.
Yeah.
They seemed like humanoid beings without a face. Obviously, the skeptical response is there's no such thing as ghosts, but let's just suspend our disbelief for a moment. You started investigating what you call the poltergeist phenomenon. How did you do that? What did you set out to do?
Well, it kind of stemmed from my childhood, like because I'd seen so much growing up. I kind of had like a burning desire to try and figure it out. It kept on bugging me and bugging me and bugging me, and in the end, I was like, okay, well, I started working in IT and I got into reverse engineering and like very logical architecture and databases and so forth. And I thought, well, if I can do these big projects at work and figure stuff out and blah blah blah, I'll just give it a go and see what I can find when it comes to the paranormal. It wasn't my intention to write a book or anything like that. It was just I just want to see if I could spot anything. So what I did was
about it is a bit like me. You started out skeptical. I started out skeptical on UFOs and then realized, gosh, there really is something here. You went into poltergeists thinking you could perhaps disprove it.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to see what I could find. So what I did was I hired out the most haunted house in the UK, which is a place called 30 East Drive. It's said to be the most, always voted, actually, to be the most violent poltergeist.
I'll let our audience into a little secret here. 30 East Drive is in a town called Pontefract in Yorkshire. And ironically, it's where my dad used to be the local doctor. And it's funny, I know Pontefract really well. I didn't know it had England's most haunted house. If you go to the PowerPoint, it's slide number 10. There is a picture of 30 East Drive. And it looks like a fairly innocuous looking house, Patrick.
Yeah, this is like a normal house. But it's actually voted the most violent poltergeist in the UK. And some would argue, Europe, and some would argue the world. So I just rented the place out, and I just went in there to see if I could figure it out. And I had 4 days in there, and within 15 minutes of being in the building, we were having crazy poltergeist effects going on around the building, and I didn't sleep for 4 days, basically.
What sort of things did you experience?
Doors massively banging like this, and there's no one in the building. Marbles hitting off, ricocheting off the walls, going across my face. Lots of weird effects with the cameras. Like we put a GoPro on the mirror, which was using like a professional adhesive, and it's so strong you could put a bag of sugar on it, and these were just popping off like corks. So all these weird and wonderful effects.
Tell me about the stairs. There's a slide that I'm referring to here, slide number 12 in the PowerPoint. Tell me about what happened on the stairs in 30 East Drive, Pontefract.
So the stairs is where it all happens. So it's either happening on the stairs or in the sub rooms, which is the beauty of the place because the activity is occurring in such small areas. It's very easy to isolate and then monitor what's going on and spot patterns. In comparison to, say, like a castle, where it's a huge landmass and then lots of weird things are going on all over the place. So what's great about Pontefract is that because it's such a small building and you can isolate these areas and start spotting the patterns and behaviors that are occurring. And in the stairs, in that area, you're getting high energy emissions that are occurring from the attic itself.
So when you say that there are high energy emissions, how were you measuring those, Patrick? How do you know there were high energy emissions?
You can get it from, say, EMF detectors, standard stuff like that. But also I've tested it with gamma radiation and microwave radiation as well.
And so you were picking up gamma wave radiation, which is a dangerous form of radiation.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
How high was this level of radiation?
Didn't have the readings, but we only got small bursts of it. But it was an observation that kept repeating. But we did discover that there was a broadcast occurring at 1.6 and 1.72 gigahertz as well. And when they were broadcasting, things were happening in the house.
So was this happening as you were walking up the stairs towards the first floor?
Yeah, happening when we're walking up, when we're walking down. When you're sitting down, it just randomly happens.
Now, let's go to slide 13. What you see is, it looks like a thermal image, but there's a really curious black shape in the lower photograph here. What am I looking at, Patrick?
Yeah. So what people see in the buildings, not just 30 East Drive, but other many haunted buildings, are what they call black masses. And they look like just vertical lines of blackness that move around very quickly. In fact, they move around in a very digital way. where they don't accelerate, they just instant acceleration, and it can move in a very digital way.
Forgive me for a moment. When you say move in a very digital way, what do you mean?
So imagine this is the black mass. It will move like this very quickly, like that.
So it's like a jump rather than a normal movement.
That's right. And it's not like it accelerates at that point. It can just go like that, very, very fast.
So maybe one of the 5 observables, instantaneous acceleration, perhaps.
Correct.
So what is it?
So after looking at lots of pictures and so forth, I discovered that through filtering the images, I noticed there was a small orb-like object about the size of a baseball. And then I managed to get hold of some more pictures, and what I discovered was this basically a small silver sphere flying around the house.
So let's go to slide 14. Slide 14 is you've got an arrow pointing to what looks like a very vague image, slightly spherical shaped, in what looks like a doorway. Explain that to me, please.
So what they're basically small silver spheres about the size of baseballs. They appear to be like drones. Effectively, they are transponders. What they do is they'll fly around the building. No one will know they're there, but then now and again they will come online. They'll start relaying signals. When they're relaying signals, they will perform actions around the building to move you away. So what it's really doing is in line with the inverse square law of radiation, whereby the further you are away from it, the safer it is. So I think these.
Forgive me. Did you take these photographs yourself?
I know the owner of the building, so he sends me all the good pictures.
So he's frequently monitoring what's being seen inside the house. Are these his images?
Well, they're taken from the teams that are in there all the time. So the teams take the pictures, but he owns all the copyrights to all the images. So he then forwards them to me, and then I can review them.
Now, have you witnessed, I mean, obviously, the inevitable suspicion would be this owner makes money from renting out this house for people like yourself that go and do these kind of experiments. The suspicion is that he's doling out photographs that add to the mystery. Are you confident that what he's seeing in these images is real?
100%, yeah.
Why do you say that?
Because the same thing has been seen in other buildings.
Okay, so let's just work through some of these images. Slide number 15, you call it example 3, and it's a silver ball apparently floating just above the floor in what looks like a doorway. Talk me through that.
So that's the type 3 sphere. That's the same object. That's the baseball size sphere that is operating in these buildings.
Now, there's another one, slide 16, and it's a group of photographs of the same object, but it seems to be moving up above slightly the floor. How were these images obtained? Obviously, they seem to be visual representations of something anomalous inside 30 East Drive. What do you know about how they were obtained?
I think they were taken by infrared camera. So from what I can tell from the originals, there were infrared shots. And indeed,
so they're not visible in normal light.
It's very hard. No, normally you can't see them in visible light. You can only see them in infrared.
So what they appear to show is some kind of metallic object.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing, Patrick, is you've gone back and looked at the history of observations that were traditionally called poltergeists or ghosts. And as I understand it, please correct me if you think I'm misrepresenting you, you think that these metallic spheres explain a lot, if not all, of past poltergeist incidents.
Yes. Yeah, because they have all the same behavior patterns.
So there's an image at slide 17 that shows what looks like perhaps a Victorian era or Edwardian era group of men sitting at a table staring at an orb moving through a room. What does that depict?
It's the same objects, but they depict it through imagery, through pictures. But it's the same thing because the type 3s can pass through walls, and they also appear as glowing balls as well, glowing spheres, which is what has been misidentified as ball lightning.
So you think that what traditionally in history has been referred to as poltergeist activity, haunted houses, perhaps the
Mhm.
spirits of deceased humans, you think that there's a more up-to-date explanation, that this is
Yeah,
something perhaps non-human?
exactly. Yeah.
So let's go to slide number 18. And this is a group of pictures, Patrick, that are mainly outside, that show there's an orb floating in a field, there's an orb floating over a fence. What strikes me about these images is one of the images is metallic, and the other is, of course, a traditional glowing orb, one of the
Mhm.
shapes that we would commonly describe as a UAP. Why do you think they're one and the same? I'm assuming you do.
Yeah. So what it is that the spheres use a field-based propulsion system that can ionize the air around them. So effectively, what you're looking at is a electrical interaction with a gas environment, which then produces photons. It's the same electrical process as lightning during electric storms. So it's that's why it looks. That's why people have misidentified it as ball lightning. But there is a key difference though, because in nature, nothing is constant. So in like a lightning strike, you'll just see a big flash and then it'll all power down again. But with these objects, you see a glowing orb, and it'll be flying across the sky for 10, 20 minutes. So the fact that it's a constant observation, a constant glow, it means that it's using an artificial power source.
Okay, but let me devil's advocate for a moment. You seem very certain that
Mhm.
a lot of, if not all of these sightings that traditionally one might call hauntings or poltergeist activity, you prefer this explanation that it's some kind of, and we'll get to this, some kind of AI operated non-human technology. In your early childhood accounts, I think there were two of the accounts that you told me about that did feature humanoid shaped objects, beings, people, spectral figures, which seem
Mhm.
to be like the more conventional haunted figure. How do you explain those in the context of your sphere analysis?
Well, the monk, for example, I think the spheres actually can produce or project like a low resolution imagery around them. So in the old days, they would look like a monk, but when you actually get real close to it, it looks more like a blur. So it's like it's like the spheres themselves can produce low resolution 3D images around them to cause diversionary effects. Regarding the other one I saw, I think that was probably more extraterrestrial or something like that, because that was very different.
So you don't think that these are deceased human beings'
No,
spirits, which I guess is the conventional paranormal explanation for the phenomena?
no, not at all. And I say that because you can set up that ease drive in a very particular way that will trigger the same effects again and again. So you can actually trigger the AI to do things.
I have to say, Patrick, you've got guts going to the most haunted house in England and staying in there for 4 days without sleep. I don't know if I'd be so willing to do that. Did you get surprised? Were you frightened at all being in a property where there did appear to be something anomalous happening?
Yeah, it is unnerving. Yeah, it is. I mean, the first day or two was okay, but the last 2 days were horrible. So
What was the worst stuff that happened to you?
I got brain swelling. I got
Wow.
brain swelling. Yeah. So on the first night after the door banging and event, everyone went rushing downstairs, and I stayed where I was. And not like I think it was like 2 days later, my brain and my head started swelling, and I couldn't hardly see anything. I was in a real bad state, and I felt rotten for about a month afterwards. And that actually replicates what I'm talking about, because it comes down to gamma radiation exposure.
So you think that the brain swelling you suffered was
Mm,
caused by a gamma radiation emission from one of
yeah,
these metallic spheres?
correct.
Did you detect gamma radiation at the time that you were in the property?
Not at that time, because that was the first time I'd been there. But we have since, yeah.
So you have previously detected gamma
Mm,
radiation in the property.
yeah.
Can you say whether it was a high level of radiation that you detected?
Well, the hardware we're using would only detect a certain amount, but we could determine that it was producing a reasonably high. It was reasonably high enough to, I can't remember the exact figures, but it's high enough to give you a nasty sting, you know.
Now, one of the things and this is where it gets fascinating for me, because I'll be honest, Patrick, when you first approached me about this theory, I took a lot of convincing, because one of the things that you have about your theory is a high degree of certainty. But there are moments where you raise evidence and it does make you go, wow, this is getting interesting. And the bit that makes it interesting for me is you started detecting signals. Talk me through what you were detecting.
So I decided to see if I could detect the signals that these things were emitting, because the Type 3s are drones by their design. So drones need one of three things. They need a network, they need AI, and they need a high energy source. So I started looking for the network and the signals, and that's what I found. So I basically recorded them, and then we put it through a special bit of software, and we can diagnose them. We can see what they're doing.
So you were using a spectrum analyzer? How were you detecting these signals?
You can pick them up as electronic crosstalk. So you can record them just on even normal digital tape.
So you were hearing them as audio files?
Yeah, as crosstalk.
When you say crosstalk, you mean white noise?
No. So when these spheres are emitting high energy signaling, it causes like the waves themselves will imprint on recorders, and people have misidentified this as other things, but it is high frequency switching, which is what it's picking up, which is a binary.
Could you hear the noise when it was being broadcast, or could you only detect it subsequently when you played it back on your digital recorder?
Both. You can hear it both on when you're recording it, but also you can hear it through other sensors as well.
Now, the interesting thing about this is that you've been able to piece together that this is a signal that is in 18-bit quality, which,
that's right.
Ironically, it's the perfect quality, I'm told, by audio friends of mine, for a good CD quality, because it's just about what the human ear can cope with. And more importantly, it's also the perfect quality for sensor transmissions. I spoke to a couple of people who are experts in signals, and they told me that 18-bit is kind of like it's the sweet spot for transmission of signals. Now, I'm going to play the audio that you very kindly sent me of something that you have in fact recorded inside 30 East Drive. So this is Quantum Paranormal. Are these digital signals emitting from haunted houses? Here we go. You're hearing that in real time, are you, Patrick, at the time it's being broadcast?
Yes, right.
What is it?
It's an artificial signal. It's high frequency switching. And I think anyone...
What's the evidence for that?
Well, I think anyone with an IT background or networking background will say the same. That's really what it is. I mean, it's what we hear every day at work.
There's another one, and this is called Recorded in 30 East Drive Digital Burst Transmissions. And you say this was recorded in the coal shed at 30 East Drive. Now, I think it's important to note here that in the shape of the building, the coal shed is the most shielded part of the building? Is it fair to say?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, so let's have a listen here. So that sounds slightly different. It's audio. Have you been able to pick them up on spectrum analyzers and detect an actual signal have you been able to measure, for example, the frequency of that signal?
Yes. Yeah. So it's broadcasting at 1.6 and 1.72 gigahertz. The same thing they're picking up a Skinwalker.
That's what I was coming to. So the fascinating thing to me is that the transmission frequency includes the signal, the 1.6 gigahertz frequency that has featured so prominently at Skinwalker Ranch whenever anomalous phenomena starts manifesting. I've lost count of the number of times that I've heard Travis Taylor shriek how we're now transmitting on 1.6 gigahertz and he can't explain where it's coming from. But basically, it seems to be a precursor to anomalous phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch, and it's a commonly detected signal. Okay, so we've got what we describe, or what you describe, as an 18-bit code, and you've actually got a representation of that code in slide 20 of the PowerPoint that you've kindly sent me. Were you able to decrypt this code?
Not yet, no, not yet. But that's more because lack of resources my end, rather than actually was possible. Right. I'm sure if we have a better equipment, I probably could, yeah.
Have you been able to show where this particular transmission is going from to?
We know where it's coming from, and it's coming from the attic, which is pretty consistent.
Attic of 30 East Drive.
Yeah. So the spheres appears to operate in one or two locations in the buildings. It's either in the attic or the basement, and it depends on the actual structure of the building itself. So like in a modern brick building, it would use the attic, but say in America, you have, in Australia, you have these buildings that are wooden and they're single floor. And then in that situation, they will be in the attic, in the basement. And the reason for that appears to be is because they will operate in the most distant or the most shielded part of the building.
So you think that whatever these objects are, you call them AI drones, part of a sphere network, you think that they're trying to minimize the threat to us humans by using what? The poltergeist activity to try and scare us away?
Yeah, the scarecrow effects, yeah.
So ghosts are scary, they're just not what we think they are.
Correct.
They're aliens.
I think that they could be responsible for other things like spontaneous human combustion. I think that's why they do these effects, because if you're too close to these things when they're relaying, or the energy level is so high, and you happen to be in the way of with signaling, then there's a good chance that you might pop. But it appears that, spontaneous human combustion's only occurred a couple of hundred times in history. So it looks like almost like there was like a software patch that went out and then it got retracted. So that's how it appears to model out.
Now, you sent me down a very deep rabbit hole, Patrick, because in my preparation for this interview, I started getting into spontaneous human combustion. And I have to admit, I'd always, as journalists are wont to do, arrogantly dismissed spontaneous combustion as a load of nonsense. But it fascinates me because there's a great case from St. Petersburg in Florida in 1951 that stumped the FBI, a woman called Mary Reeser, and she was reduced to a pile of ash in her apartment. Her chair was destroyed, but the walls and plastic light bulb above were intact. The body temperature was estimated at 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, but the blaze hadn't spread. The FBI investigated, and they formally found there was no evidence of an accelerant or source for the mystery. So what are you saying caused poor dear Mary Reeser to suddenly explode?
Well, how it models out is the type 3s are like the data network. They operate very low to the ground. When they're using buildings, not only are they shielding their emissions, but they're shielding the emissions from being detected from above. So the fact that they're using burst relaying and they're using buildings mean it's a very undetectable, very stealthy network. But what they're doing is they're relaying up to the type 2 spheres, which are larger variants, which are about the size of bowling balls, a bit bigger. And they're the ones that have been seen above treetops, above houses, over mountains, and so forth. So what they're doing is that the type 2s are connecting down to the type 3s via a low energy signal, and then they're relaying along to the type 1V formations up in the sky.
Now, so let's be clear
Yeah.
This sphere network hypothesis is the
Hmm.
hypothesis that you are offering. This isn't something that's already been scientifically described in the literature. This is Patrick Jackson's hypothesis, but I think it's a good one. And the interesting thing is, I'll tell you, I've spoken privately to people who are aware of the UAP phenomenon, and they tell me that you're onto something here. They don't entirely agree with you, but they do acknowledge that there do appear to be networks of metallic spheres operating around the world, and there are different types of spheres. So there's a map or a diagram that you have on your PowerPoint, and it's the model that you've put together based on your idea of what these spheres are. Talk me through that logical model that you've put together.
So you have the type 3 spheres, which are in the buildings, basically creating a line of sight microwave-based network that is burst relaying, and they act like transponders, which switch on and off when they need to. When they're connecting, they will connect up to the type 2 spheres, which are the larger variants of the same technology, larger variants of them. They are above the treetops, above houses, above mountains. And what they do is they will daisy chain across the sky, like in chains, 1, 2, 3, and 4. They will either go straight up in the sky, or they will go over topology, such as mountains and other obstacles. And then what they're doing is they're linking up to the type 1V formation. That's even larger variants. They're about the size of beach balls. They look like huge silver spheres in a perfect triangle, which is a equilateral concise triangle, and they operate like in a single plane. So they'll move around like this in the sky and rotate and pivot. And then what you'll have another one right here. You'll have a type 2 here, and then you'll have the V formation here, and it will move around like this in the sky. And what this is doing is, because you're seeing the same formation repeating again and again and again, and this is all over the world, and now people are catching it every day on camera. You can actually reverse engineer what's actually occurring mathematically just from observation. And what they're doing is a thing called trilateration. So what they're doing is the triangle at the front is doing a two-dimensional scan of the sky, and then the one at the back is doing a distance calculation. And then when you add all that data together, you get three-dimensional tracking in space. In other words, this is a very high-resolution tracking system or targeting system.
And who's doing it?
Well, how it models out is these guys live here. So and it appears to be ground-based. So it's probably built under the ground.
So you suspect there might be a type 4 sphere, which we haven't seen yet because it's hidden underground?
No, I think there is deep networking architecture around the Earth that is controlling this.
You know, it's interesting because I'm doing investigations at the moment, might not surprise our viewers to know this, into the idea that there are buried craft around the world, not just one, don't get excited everybody, but multiple craft all around the world. And it's interesting because if there was a sphere network, as you say, as well as requiring AI, a network, and an energy source, I presume you also need some kind of control platform. You're
That's right.
hypothesizing that control platform's under the ground or under the ocean.
That's right.
Now, obviously, there's a hell of a long bow here, Patrick, and I'm sure the debunkers and the skeptics are practically foaming at the mouth with their splenetic rage at your latitude that I've given you. What justification have you got for reaching the conclusion that you've reached, that there is this sphere network?
Well, I mean, my background is all about looking at patterns. I'm very good at pattern recognition. My job is all about pattern recognition. And all I've done is I first noticed the type 3s in the building. Then I questioned why. Then I figured out, oh, they're a network. I traced the network. In my new book, I even get it down to literally exact GPS coordinates. I then figured out it's burst relaying. I then find the signals. I then find the emissions. I then see the larger variants, type 2s, which are tree level above the houses, which means that they are logically connecting to them because they're the same variants. It's the same technology, just a larger variant. And then you see the type 2s daisy chaining across the sky. and then you see them link into the Cycle 1V formation, which is even the bigger variants. So to me, it's all pretty logical and pretty easy. I think anyone with a technical background or IT background or networking background will spot this in a heartbeat.
Now, if anyone wants to read the detail of Patrick's analysis, and I really commend that you do, because frankly, I don't know if Patrick's got the whole answer, but he's done a lot of work. He's written a great book called The Sphere Network. It's a rollicking read, Patrick. Where can people obtain it?
It's on Amazon. Just get it on there. Nice and easy.
Sure. And you have your own website as well. Is there something that people can access to view your work?
Yeah, I mean, I have a website which I have all the equipment that I designed and what I used for the book, and so people can go and replicate it effectively.
What's your website?
It's a website called Sphere Tech.
You've also got a YouTube channel called Quantum Paranormal, where a lot of the videos that you've shot are displayed. One of the things that you've developed is what you call a dog whistle. Now, this is different, you believe, from the dog whistle that is being deployed or has been deployed by Skywatcher, but you've developed a device that both visually and orally attracts the phenomenon.
That's right.
Talk me through it. What is your dog whistle?
So many years ago, I spotted that the small Type 3 spheres that are in the buildings are also seen in fields. And in one of those fields, there was a binary code. So I kind of figured out what language it was in, and then I just put my own commands in, and then I did some magic to put into an app, and then I got people to try it. And first we started testing it in 30 East Drive, and within like 20 seconds of running it, all the sensors start going off and things start happening around the house. And now it's used quite a lot there. And also people are now using it outside. So when they are running this thing outside and, let's say during the night, during a clear night, they're now reporting that they're seeing what they call stars moving around.
There's a video that you very kindly sent me, and I hope you don't mind if we use it, which shows you using your dog whistle in a field. Mm-hmm. And okay. What it seems to start off with is there's a visual strobe. What's the idea behind the visual strobe in your dog whistle?
So the strobe was also used in my first book 10 years ago. I came up with an idea of how to penetrate adaptive stealth. So if anything was using some sort of stealth technology, that it would allow me to see it or get it on camera. And the images of that thing is caught is also in the book. So we use that in tandem with the actual dog whistle itself.
But the point that you're making is that the disruptive lights on a strobe seem to attract the phenomenon.
That as well, yeah.
And what's the frequency that you're using? Are you able to discuss the frequencies that you use in the signal that you're transmitting? I presume there's some kind of signal being transmitted as well.
Yeah, there is, but yeah, I can't really go into that. I'm trying to. I want to develop it more, so I don't want to give away all my secrets.
No, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Skywatcher's a bit secretive as well about their dog whistle, but does it work?
Yeah, it does work. In fact, one guy he used the strobe in his house because his house was getting he had some poltergeist activity going on in his house. So he turned the strobe on, and he came back from the kitchen and he saw two guys standing there looking at him with big eyes. And he dropped his cup of tea, ran out the house, went to his neighbor, and he's in a complete, very distraught kind of manner. And he was so upset or so stressed, he booked himself into hospital for a couple of days.
And so what was he seeing?
Yeah,
Who were the two men?
Well, he says there were just these tall guys with big eyes, and it freaked him out so much that it really upset him for a few days. So
he's saying that they were humanoid, but not human.
That's right.
So basically you're asserting that he's claiming there were non-human beings that manifested in his living room because he turned on your strobe.
Yeah. Or they were there already.
Now, in the video that I referred to earlier, there is a sequence where you're pointing a laser pointer. You initially point out that there appear to be triangle-shaped orbs sitting in the sky, and you say that they are part of the sphere network, and that they're triangular, possibly equilateral triangles. What happens? Talk me through what happens.
Well, it appears that there is a whole mesh of equilateral triangles in our night sky. And I think that when I look at the night sky these days, I see engineering. I see a network. I don't see stars as what other people say. I actually see engineering. And it kind of goes hand in hand with what Beatrice is saying as well, because she is saying that they're detecting triplets up in the atmosphere as well on their data sets.
Now, you're talking about Dr. Beatrice Villarol, a longtime friend of the program. Beatrice recently came out with an extraordinarily successful peer-reviewed paper, which has survived the debunks, which basically points to the fact that there is something that was in geostationary Earth orbit in the early 1950s, before humans went into space with any kind of satellite or anything that could possibly get out to the 44,000 kilometers in geostationary orbit. It's artificial, it's specular, highly reflective, and it's a mystery. What do you think that is?
I think, well, I've had a look at the data set myself, and these are just my own opinions. I can't talk for her. But when I look at it, I see triangles. I see equilateral triangles, which match the Type 1b formations.
So you think that this sphere network that you're describing on our planet is also operating in Earth orbit?
Yes.
And that might explain the hundreds of thousands of objects that Dr. Beatrice Villarol has described in her peer review paper.
Correct.
So what is this? I mean, I'm inviting you to speculate, Patrick, because of course, really, you can describe a phenomenon. You can't know what its motivations are. Based on your logical analysis, which I do find pretty compelling, what do you think it is?
Well, it looks to me like a global defense network. And I think it explains a Fermi paradox. It also explains poltergeist activity, and it explains spontaneous human combustion. And
so the Fermi paradox is, if we live in such a huge universe with so many Earth-type planets, where the hell are the aliens? Why haven't they shown themselves? You believe that this purported defense system is essentially there to stop the aliens from engaging with us.
Correct.
Talk me through why you believe there is this sphere defense network in operation both on our planet and in our orbit.
Well, number one is because of the mathematics. In fact, I put the mathematical model through Grok Heavy, and it came back as saying, yes, this is correct. So I'm happy to put the mathematical model in front of any scientist, any mathematician, if they ask. But also...
What does the math show?
That they're using trilateration, which is obviously tracking objects in space.
Now, how do you say the math shows that these objects are using intelligently trilateration? What is it about the way these objects move that displays trilateration?
It's the formations that they're using. So the triangle at the front is in perfect mathematical formation to do two-dimensional tracking. And then the one in the middle, the center rear, is doing the distance calculation. So when you fuse all that data together, you have a high-resolution targeting system.
So let's just go back to 30 East Drive, Pontefract for a moment, the source of your original interest and study of poltergeist activity. Now, the coal shed that you say is the most shielded part of the house, presumably that's where, according to your theory, the spheres want you to be when they do their emissions, because they're presumably programmed to stop any of those emissions from hurting humans. Yeah.
In fact, they seem to have the same library of effects all over the world. So that's why poltergeists all have the same behavior patterns. So what it's doing, it bangs a coal shed door downstairs. Everybody goes rushing down there, which then means the radiation itself has to pass through a number of walls before it reaches that area. So in fact, it's the safest place to be in the building.
So that coal shed happens to be a very solid brick shed. And if there were gamma or microwave emissions, they would certainly be slowed down by whatever that brick wall's putting in front of them.
That's right. That's right.
And where do you believe that the objects, the spheres, are transmitting from?
The attic at the top of the building, in the attic.
Now, is this something that you've been able to verify with your signals analysis?
Yes.
How have you done that?
Because it's always in the same place. You can actually put your measurements down there and track it in 3 dimensions as well. So it's very trackable. Once you know what you're looking for, it's very trackable.
Now, what fascinates me is we've previously had on the program a scientist, a very reputable scientist called Jim Segala, Dr. Jim Segala. And Jim has these units called MUPAS sensors, which, interestingly enough, I've just bought one. And they allow you to detect gamma radiation, electromagnetic radiation at the time of anomalous phenomena. And the work that Jim's done, and we've discussed this in a previous reality check, what it allows us to do is to show that at the very time that people are reporting anomalous phenomena, his MUPAS sensors detect a rise in gamma radiation, electromagnetic radiation, including microwave radiation. Is this something that you've witnessed as well?
Yep, same thing.
This is getting more and more fascinating. So just to make that point, there's a slide number 24, which shows the readout from one of the MUPAS units. And as Jim has explained previously to Reality Check, when the people report anomalous activity in their homes, they're not aware of what the MUPAS sensor is recording. And the power in Jim's work is that contemporaneously, at the same time as these people are reporting that they're having an anomalous experience with something perceived to be paranormal, the sensor system is picking up this anomalous radiation. And you're seeing the same thing, Patrick.
Exactly the same thing. It's the same thing all over the world.
Now, the interesting thing to me about this is that that kind of radiation causes symptoms that are consistent with a lot of the things that people do when they see ghosts and when they have experiences that are alleged to be paranormal. Talk me through the kind of biological effects on humans that happen when people say they've had an experience with a haunting or a ghost or a poltergeist.
Yeah, they get nauseous, they get headaches, feel sick, they get constant migraines, they get like a sunburn as well. There's the whole list of effects match gamma radiation bursts.
Now, the fascinating thing to me is you've trawled the web for imagery that people have posted from all over the world, and you've sent me detailed videos of individual types of spheres. I'm just going to talk generally to the notion of the type 2 daisy chain. Talk me through the type 2 daisy chain, Patrick. What are we looking at on this video?
It appears to be a microwave-based communication network. So they're using microwaves because it's directional and very stealthy as well. So unless you're in direct line of sight of the microwave, you won't detect it. So it's a perfect thing you'd use for like a defense network. But what you have the type 3s in the buildings, and what you need to do is you need to link the type 1s to the type 3 data network. So depending on where the type 3s are and where they need to be, there's going to be a distance there. So what you'd have is a daisy chain effect. So you'll have one here, and basically microwave relay stations, but in the sky, and they'll just relay up, maybe 5 or 6 up in the sky, maybe all the way to orbit, and that's what they're doing. But they also relay over mountains as well. So people will see these things hovering just above mountain tops, and also they'll be ground hugging as they go down.
Okay, but let me devil's advocate for a moment, Patrick. If these things are space-based, as you suggest, presumably they've developed satellite technology. Why couldn't they just use satellite transmission? Why do they need relays, microwave relays? Isn't that a slightly antediluvian way for an advanced technological civilization to try and use communications?
It's ground-based. It's controlled from the ground up.
Now, why do you say that? What's the proof for that?
Because the spheres themselves have been seen deployed from the ground. They've been seen coming out of holes in the ground from the ocean, from lakes. everything. And also the way the architecture works as well. So from a technical point of view, like a technical architecture point of view, it must be ground-based, because the spheres themselves are only like endpoints. They're like the drones, they're the drones, but the actual processing, the real hard work must occur on the servers, the AI systems or whatever, and they must be based on the ground.
Now, this all begs the question, because one of the great theories about UAPs, and I think one of the things that explains the Pentagon's, how does one say this, duplicitous evasiveness on the question of whether or not NHI is a sufficient nomenclature for ET. It's conspicuous to me that the Pentagon, whenever it's asked about its claim that there is no evidence of extraterrestrial engagement with this planet, I know a colleague of mine, Chris Sharp from the UK, your country, has actually asked the Pentagon whether that term ET could be swapped for non-human intelligence. And the Pentagon spokeswoman, Susan Goff, has actually said no. They've stuck to ET. And it's interesting because that raises the question, in my mind, is this phenomenon either interdimensional or interterrestrial, like crypto-terrestrial? Is it something on this planet already, hence not extraterrestrial? Is that something you're exploring as part of your theory?
Well, it must be. It must be ultra-terrestrial. It must be.
Why do you say that?
By the way it's designed, by the way the architecture works, the way the signaling works, the way that it must be processed, where it's processed. Also, this network has to be kept up to date as well. It's not like an ancient thing that's been left here for centuries. It's up to date and adaptive. It must be controlled from here, and also it must be manned as well. So it's not like fully autonomous. It's like our own defense networks. A big portion of it will be AI based or automated, but then you'll have people, in the middle, sort of pressing buttons as well. So
okay, so work through this with me, Patrick. You're suggesting that there is a crypto-terrestrial civilization that is clearly capable of some kind of advanced, presumably anti-gravitic technology. It has energy systems that we, at the moment, clearly don't have as humans. It's way beyond our technology. You're surmising that they are sharing this planet with us, but staying low, staying stealthy.
Yeah.
I find that an intriguing and appealing theory. It's very interesting. One of the things that is, I think, a supportive feature of your theory is the fact that all over the world, there are images that have been gathered by independent witnesses of what often are metallic spheres hovering in the air, and they are clearly displaying at least some of the 5 observables. They're stealthy, instantaneous velocity, hypersonic velocity. They appear to go transmedium. They have no visible means of propulsion. And if we go to slide 30, this is the type 2 sphere, medium-sized sphere. It's quite a clear, high-resolution image of an object that was photographed in Poland. And it's, I think you say the size is approximately 30 to 50 centimeters in diameter. Talk me through what this image is showing.
They're the type 2s, they're the relays. So they'll be relaying down to the type 3s in the buildings, which will then create a data link to the type 1V formation.
So why do we see them in this image, but we often don't see them? For example, in the original image of the sphere that you said you saw or was photographed inside 30 East Drive in Pontefract, the haunted house, there was an image of a sphere that was only visible in infrared. What's going on here? Why are they visible sometimes with the human eye or cameras and not visible other times?
It depends what mode. I think it depends what mode they're in. Like, I think when they're like invisible, for example, or using some sort of adaptive stealth, they might not have the full range of abilities that they would have otherwise if they are completely visible. So I think the type 2s, because they're relaying, and they're just visible and they don't seem to mind. They're just flying around, and they are the most commonly seen as well. The type 3s, because they're in buildings, people would prefer, well, they prefer not to be seen by people, but you can see them under infrared quite clearly. And you can also see them under LiDAR very easily as well.
Now, why are they then sometimes glowing like orbs?
So I think it depends on what energy state they're in. If they need to do like long distance transmissions or high energy actions, the energy state of the whole object will get bigger, and then it will start energizing the air around it, and then it will start glowing. But also, I think it could be used for signaling as well, because I've noticed that they do flash at each other as well quite a lot. So in the same way our own Navy uses light signals, these things use light signals as well, which is also very stealthy.
And what we're looking at here, Patrick, is type 1 spheres in a triangular formation around what appears to be an air show. Mm-hmm. Why are air shows significant? I've noticed there's a great image during the Queen's Jubilee of a metallic sphere flying through the plumes of jet aircraft that have just flown over the palace during the Queen's Golden Jubilee. Why do air shows appear to attract this phenomena, and why are they often in threes?
So it appears that the algorithm that they use to trigger on, one of them is anomalous air traffic, so out-of-place air traffic. And air shows is a very good example of out-of-place air traffic, where it wasn't there like last week, but it is there this week. And I think that they just ping it and see what's going on. So that appears to be one of the AI triggers that is used. That's what it appears to be.
So the implication here is that there is, if your theory is correct, there is a non-human or possibly highly advanced human civilization. We don't know what it is. It's a crypto-terrestrial civilization sharing this planet with us by stealth, and it's conducting intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance on us petty little apes. What the hell is going on, Patrick? Who are they?
Well, I don't know who they are, but what it appears to be is that these V formations are also seen in the Bible as well. They're seen in religious imagery and all sorts. So I think they've been here for a very long time, and it's just now we're getting a bit more aware of it.
Now, you did take me down the rabbit hole a bit, Patrick, because when you sent me your book and your slide deck, I went through it skeptically. And then I found myself going, crikey, this is interesting. So if I go to slide 32, these are images from 2020 in Italy, and there are two configurations of triangular objects in the sky. You're asserting that these are the type 2 spheres in the same position relative to the type 1 spheres. Talk me through what we're seeing in this image.
So in that image, you have the triangle that is in a flat configuration, which I call the horizontal configuration. The other one is vertical, where the triangle is up on its side. And mathematically, how it works out is when you're in a flat configuration, you've got the type 2 here, they're doing a vertical distance calculation. So they're tracking something directly above, while when it's up on its side, it's tracking something to the side.
So at slide 33, you've done a good graphic of what you call the overall trilateration system. And there's an orange-shaped, red-shaped target spacecraft, some kind of elliptical disk in the frame. You're saying that that configuration of the three triangular equilateral triangle shape in the sky is essentially how they trilaterate to presumably lock on to the target.
That's right.
What do they do once they see the target?
Destroy it.
And you've got video of this, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
What do those videos show? Talk me through what we see.
You see this was taken through a telescope, and it was taken about 15 years ago as well. But you see the spheres coming in, and then you'll see a triangle form, and then you'll see an explosion.
So whatever this is, you believe it's acting offensively against something coming from outside Earth to stop those objects from coming into our planet.
Correct.
I mean, the implications of that are enormous. As you say, it would explain the Fermi paradox, the lack of visible aliens engaging with this planet. Do you think the United States and other countries in the world with the technologies to detect what you've detected know about this system that you're describing?
Yeah, I think they're well aware of it.
Why do you say that?
Because the spheres have been seen from the ISS live cam, the live stream, many times, and in triplets as well, and then they cut the feed.
Just for the fun of it, there's a great slide at slide 34 in the Irish Star newspaper. I think it was close to the front page of their website. There's 3, again, equilateral triangle spheres, and there's the one sphere to the left of that equilateral triangle. Talk me through, if your theory is correct, what is this image in the Irish Star describing?
Yeah, so in that case, you have the V formation coming online, and then you have the Type 2 behind it, and it's all powering up, and it basically it swoops up like this in a big V like this up in the sky.
Slide 35 is another one. Again, this was an image captured in June of 1971 over Lake Tagish in the Yukon of Canada. In that case, the triangle looks like it's a bit flat. You've got the object to the left. I presume that's the Type 2 sphere. I'm trying to figure out my spheres here. But it doesn't look like an equilateral triangle. I presume that's from the way that we're perceiving it because it's lying flat.
That's right, yeah. And in that configuration, it's doing a direct vertical scan of the sky. And people, this is kind of interesting because some people out there think this is kind of like a US government reverse engineered system. And it's not, because to build something like this requires so many layers of technology and so many integrations. We just can't replicate it on any scale, even now. So this system is a highly engineered or ultra engineered defense network, which is hypersonic and AI based.
Now, one of the things that intrigues me, that adds to your theory that this is a non-human technology, is that on occasion, images have been captured both at 30 East Drive in Pontefract and in other locations of what appear to be grey beings, humanoid beings, the classic grey alien. Talk me through those images.
Well, they get caught now and again. People are seeing figures walking around these buildings, and they appear to be using some kind of stealth technology, and people are catching them now and again, mostly on full spectrum cameras. But when you filter them and you boost it up a bit, and you can actually start seeing what they are.
So we're coming to a close here, Patrick, but I guess what I'm interested in doing is inviting you to speculate. Why? Why would a non-human, or essentially perhaps an advanced human terrestrial society, want to install the kind of system that you're describing?
Well, if the Type 1 V formation has been seen in religious imagery going back centuries, it's highly likely that they've been here since the beginning, and we're the new kids on the block. So they've got a global defense network that what protects them, and we're kind of the ones in the middle.
Because it doesn't appear it's necessarily protecting us, does it? But it's certainly protecting the planet from something without.
Yeah, it protects them, but we're the ones in the middle. But from what I can tell, I mean, it looks like how it models out anyway, logically, is that we kind of play a role in the defense network itself. So I mean, when you think about it, what are humans good at mostly? You know, and if you took a look at the human race as a whole, what's the main skill set? And we're very good at fighting and killing each other, and that's what we're doing all over the planet. So if you can imagine, like, if there was a craft that crashes on Earth, then they'll have us to deal with as well. So the UTs have the technology to bring these things down, but we have the muscle to deal with it. So it looks like we're the third line of defense, and that appears to be the case.
You suspect the US is already collaborating with this advanced intelligence that's operating this system?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, you've drawn a hell of a lot of long bows there, Patrick, and no doubt there will be people who will try to skeptically rebut what you assert. I don't think necessarily you've got all of the answers, but you've done a pretty thorough job, and it certainly is a thought-provoking analysis. Hey, Patrick Jackson, thank you so much for joining Reality Check. I look forward to getting you back one day when you are able to talk about the results. At least it'll get people off my back, because one of the most consistent demands we get from our audience is to know what the hell happened to Jim Marlin's mysterious sphere. Good to talk to you, and thank you so much for joining Reality Check.
Okay, thank you very much.
And before we go, please don't forget to send in your questions for our weekly question and answer. You can email us at realitycheck@newsnationnow.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Hello and welcome back to Reality Check on a day when the UAP caucus in Congress is having a secret meeting in a skiff to hear from the new head of Arrow, Tim Phillips, and also the gentleman who presides over America's darkest, deepest secrets, the controller of the special access programs. Both these gentlemen are being investigated and questioned by members of the UAP caucus in the House, who are asking, I hope, some curly questions about the UAP mystery. This is also a day, by the way, where intriguing documents have been released by the Department of Homeland Security revealing the existence of a proposed secret program called, tantalizingly, Kona Blue. And it was a program that was hoped to be able to investigate a supposed reverse engineering program of alien spacecraft. It didn't happen, and a lot of people are saying, including Arrow, that nothing came of it. But can we believe them? Believe me, Reality Check will be chasing down that story like a dog on a bone. But first today, let me take you to another intriguing mystery. Just off the coast of Nova Scotia, Canada, there's a privately owned island that has been the centre of mystery and intrigue for hundreds of years. Oak Island was first settled by folk from Massachusetts after the mainland Chester area was settled in about 1761. In the early days, it was known as Smith Island, later Gloucester Island, and then in the late 17th century, it was 18th century, my apologies, it was Oak Island. Now, for reasons that I'm hoping our interviewees today will explain, ever since the mid-1800s, Oak Island has been the centre of feverish speculation about hidden pirate treasure. And it's all about a settler called Daniel McGuinness, who in 1857 wrote a book that told the legend of the treasure of Oak Island for the very first time. And this beautiful piece of island real estate hasn't been the same since. There's claims of buried pirate treasure. There's even been claims that Francis Bacon might have buried some of the beautiful manuscripts of William Shakespeare's plays on the island. Heaven only knows why. But more intriguingly than that, if that doesn't tantalize your curiosity, there's also claims that the Ark of the Covenant, no less, may be buried there. Even more thrilling, and this is the part I love, there's also a curse on the treasure. It reportedly states that 7 men will die in the search for the treasure before it is found. So ever since the 1850s, different treasure hunters have scoured Oak Island hunting for the treasure. The most recent owners include a treasure hunter by the name of Dan Blankenship, who partnered with a company called Oak Island Tours run by David Tobias. That company dissolved, and in February 2019, a new partnership was formed with a company called the Michigan Group. This group included brothers Rick and Marty Lagina. Now, Rick and Marty are joining me now. Their History Channel show has followed the story of this now 226-year-old mystery. They've just wrapped up their incredibly 11th season. Come on, gentlemen, please tell me that after 11 seasons, the curse of Oak Island has finally found the treasure. You are the #1 non-fiction show on US cable TV. Rick and Marty Lagina, thank you for joining me. Tell me, why is the show so successful?
Marty, I'm going to let you take that.
No, I was going to tell you to take that. I'll have a go at it.
Have a go.
Have a go. I think it's successful because it is genuinely real. My understanding from the cameramen we talked to is a lot of reality TV is only partially real. This thing is 100% real. They approached us. We didn't even want to be on TV. And so what we're doing, I think, resonates with people. That would be my answer.
Because I think the thing, forgive me for interrupting there, but I think the thing that I started out researching when I looked at this show, you always hear these stories with these reality shows. There's even allegations that things sometimes get planted to make the show more interesting. But It really got me. One of the things that really got me was early in the program, you found a granite stone 90 feet down, what you call the money pit. And it was carved with peculiar symbols. There's a code on the stone, but one attempt to translate the stone says, quote, 40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried. Now, how sure are you, for example, about claims that that stone carries such a code?
It's a difficult answer because we don't currently have possession of the stone. It was seen by many people. It ultimately ended up in John Smith's fireplace, one of the residents of the island. And then, amazingly, it disappeared. And we have copies. It was written about, but even as we speak, we don't know that the glyphs on it are accurate. But I truly believe that a stone was found, and that day, the stone was recovered right around 90 feet, and some stories suggest higher up. But then at that point, the money pit shaft flooded, and with seawater, and every searcher since then has been stymied. Was it a joke? Was it a, come hither thing, keep digging and spring the trap?
Yeah, that's what I think based on our 10 years or 11 years out there. I think the most likely thing is that was a plant in order for people to keep digging in that very location. And it sure worked, because shortly after that, some sort of flood mechanism was triggered. I mean, it worked beautifully. And it was tantalizing enough. So that's what happened. And that's part of the complexity of what we're dealing with.
But gentlemen, can you help me here? I always thought pirates just hung around the Caribbean, or the Caribbean, as you Americans call them. What's the story with pirates coming up to as far as Nova Scotia? Why on earth were pirates ever conceivably in that part of the world?
Actually, the route past Nova Scotia was following the Gulf Stream back. So pirates would have been using it potentially all the time to go back to Europe. But furthermore, part of this mystery is that coconut fiber has been found extensively on this island and seems to have been utilized to help with filtering the water to flood the trap. Well, coconut fiber does come from the Caribbean. So there are certainly ties, although at this juncture, Rick, we don't think it is pirates.
No, we think it's far too complex. The engineering associated with what we have come to understand and or believe is far too complex. There's nothing in the world that would suggest this was a pirate endeavor. There's no similar place where this type of work was done. Not by pirates.
So why do we think there's even a possibility that there is a treasure buried deep underground Oak Island?
I'm going to let
How
my
long
brothers.
Yeah. How long do you have? I mean,
I'm happy to hear it.
okay. There are all kinds of people who will tell you their own theories and with reasonable credibility as to why. But there are two things at this juncture, in my mind, and I'm sort of the skeptic. At this juncture, there are two things that make me think it's quite possible, probable even. One is the complexity of what we keep uncovering and the artifacts that keep going back farther and farther into history. It's just something very odd and very difficult to accomplish happened there. So that would be one. But the bigger one, since I think science is very important, we continuously get samples of the water at depth that has abnormal concentrations of silver, gold, copper, zinc. And the scientists doing the work say it's coming from some rather large source that we haven't found yet. So that's why I think there's something there.
So just explain to our audience who may not be familiar with the show, you've referred to something about the complexity of the tunnel system that you think is underneath the Oak Island, potentially to conceal the treasure. What have you found and how does it demonstrate complexity?
Your turn, Rick.
Well, you have to believe in the somewhat believe in the historical narrative that, when the initial companies explored, they triggered a booby trap system, triggering the intrusion of seawater into the bottom of the money pit shaft. And once they realized it was salt water, they went down to the shore, Smith's Cove, and they uncovered what they believed to be box drains, stones, flagstones on end with a cap rock. It appeared to them that they had some party or parties had removed the entirety of the beach over almost 200 feet and reconstructed the beach to facilitate the introduction of seawater at depth at 90 feet in the money pit shaft. That's quite a feat of engineering. You're 500 some feet away from Smith's Cove to the money pit. And like I said, you have to believe at some level, you have to believe again in the historical narrative. Those initial peoples saw what they saw, recorded it, unfortunately not sufficiently well enough. And the old adage holds, right? They weren't looking for proof of engineering complexities. They were looking for a treasure. They figured if someone had gone to these great lengths, surely something valuable, perhaps exceedingly valuable, is buried at depth. So, but in terms of our work, it's what we've uncovered in Smith's Cove. We're still trying to prove original work, but again, everything that we have seen, the carbon dating, the application of science, C14 testing, dendrochronology, all of that points to, as Marty said earlier, very early attempt at disguising or protecting something of immense value.
Yeah.
So roll me back to 1857, to the story of this young man, Daniel McGinnis. What did he find and what prompted the book that he wrote about the legend of supposedly buried treasure?
Actually, you need to go back to 1795 with Daniel McGinnis. He and a group of boys went over to that island and found. What's that, Rick?
Just three boys, but they weren't. That's the story. They weren't boys. They were young men. Right,
but the point is, this started in 1795, and they came back at the turn of the century, and were convinced that they had uncovered something very substantial, and dug as far as they could, and then from there on it gets incredibly complicated. But all kinds of people have followed in their footsteps trying to uncover this. One thing we know for sure is the workings underground at this point are incredibly extensive. just from the searchers, which makes our task even harder. But I mean, President Roosevelt was one of the searchers. John Wayne was involved. All kinds of personalities went after this treasure. And
even my Aussie forebear Errol Flynn apparently was one of the people that dug it.
He tried to buy the island.
He would. There wouldn't have been enough women on the island for Errol Flynn, I suspect. But
yeah.
But the thing I just want to clarify: did McGuinness and his friends, did they actually find the money pit at the time? Did they see the wooden structure as it was even then, or is it possible that the money pit was built afterwards?
No, that's not possible. The what they discovered was not cribbed. It was uncribbed, but they could see pick marks in the clay as they dug down. They were excavating a former excavation. Again, so Rick is right.
That intrigues me. So you've got the Chester area on the mainland was settled in about 1761, I understand. Is the suggestion here that as a young boy, he's going there in the 1790s, it was already in existence, the money pit at that time? Someone had come there and built these elaborate constructions into the ground on Oak Island, even before British settlement on the island.
Probably well before.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Perhaps.
Well,
so who was it?
Well, if you can answer that, we'd like you to come up and help us.
This is where you got me in. I mean, I was doing my research and reading about Daniel McGuinness, and initially I thought, well, surely these fortifications were constructed years after McGuinness made the discovery. But the thing that intrigues me is you've got a young man and his friends going across to this island in the late, as you say, 1790s. He writes the book in 1857. But whatever these fortifications are, whatever this construction is, it was there before British settlers came across from Massachusetts.
100%.
That appears to be rigged. Yep.
Wow.
Yes.
So please tell me, what are the most intriguing discoveries that you've found during your search?
Marty, you go first.
Go ahead, Rick. Okay. Well, look, just this year, I believe these episodes have run, so they get mad at us sometimes for letting the cat out of the bag. But just this year, we found several things that date back to medieval times, and some things that date back farther than that. Inexplicable things like Roman coins, buttons that our archaeologists tells us were out of fashion by the 1600s. So something was going on this island way, way back. And that is really the intrigue. We found a red cross that is medieval, apparently, and might have been associated with this group called the Knights Templar. A lot of it just seems unbelievable, but yet here are the artifacts. So we're trying to pull it all together. I believe we will.
Now, that's where my BS detectors, I have to admit, went onto high alert, because not only is there a claim that Francis Bacon might have buried the manuscripts of Shakespeare there, I want you to explain that one to me, but there's also this claim that was very recent that there might in fact be a location here for the Ark of the Covenant, no less. Please explain.
Yes. Your turn.
Well, look, at the end of the day, we can't prove any of that, okay? Not yet. But there have been some very credible researchers and the research they've uncovered that make it very credible. Peter Amundsen, for one, was one of the first people to come and present the idea of Nolan's cross representing the Kabbalistic tree of life. I always believed that Nolan's cross was important. I think there had to have been a map on top of the ground if people were to come back and retrieve it. There had to be a way to, after an extended period of time, you would have to have some way to locate the site. And I think the one thing that is exceedingly interesting to me is there are still 4 or 5 credible theories that fit the timeline. They fit the dating of the artifacts. They fit the personalities of the time. There's always been by very amazing people that there was this belief that Bacon actually was Shakespeare, or he and Ben Jonson, for instance, and a group of others actually wrote the Shakespearean folios, and that Bacon intended to create a new Atlantis. Several of his manuscripts suggest that. And the man was a genius by all accounts, and actually wrote a treatise on protecting manuscripts with mercury in a watery environment. So it lines up that is possible, but there's nothing that we have uncovered to date that prove that it's the Shakespearean folios or that it's the Ark of the Covenant. But the research continues, and I have told Marty and others that I think after 226 years of digging and drilling, I think the one sure way to write the final page of that Reader's Digest article is through research. And the research is indicating that these 4 or 5 theories are and remain credible.
See, but
that's part of the story. Forgive me for interrupting, but that's part of the story. I'm so sorry. You speak first, my friend.
No, it's okay. I just want this. It's why we're different, though, Rick and I. He wants to research this and figure it out that way. I want to dig. I want to dig and find it. We have a different philosophy, but go ahead, interrupted.
Part of the thing that intrigues me about the whole story, Rick, is, as I understand it, when you were a young boy, you read this Reader's Digest article that you're referring to, which told the story of Oak Island to you for the first time. I think you were sitting in the dentist or something, and that captured your imagination. Is that the correct story?
It is. Their January 1965 Reader's Digest article. It was a story about Oak Island of 5.5 pages, I believe. And when I got to the last page, I was disappointed because I wanted to know, the answers, and came home and showed it to Marty. And, he can speak for himself, but I was fascinated. But as I have said many times, it wasn't like I said, okay, when I get to be older, I'm going to dedicate my life to this pursuit. That wasn't the case. I just wanted to know. I wanted the answers. Who doesn't love a good book? But you don't quit on the last chapter in a good book. You want to read the final page. And that's what we endeavor to do, write the final page. And as Marty said earlier, there's been some incredibly talented, smart, capable, almost visionary people associated with this search for 226 years. And like you, Ross, they were captivated by this story. And it's amazing how it tags into people. And you asked why the show was successful earlier, and I think it's exactly what Marty said, but there's one more component to it, and that is that it appeals to everyone on a different level. Sure, there's the treasure component. Then there's the search for real answers. Then there's a historical component. Then there's a science component. There's a technology component. There's a personality component because, as you said, even Errol Flynn was captivated by this place. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, we have a letter when he was on a battleship out in Mahone Bay, off of Mahone Bay. When the war started, he intended to come to the island to revisit it. After he had been on the island as part of one of the initial searches. And he writes a letter, which we still have, and he says, I would love to come back to that romantic spot, but unfortunately, the world events have taken me away.
Kind of busy right now.
Yeah, so it's stunningly captivating, but it is, for different people, different reasons why.
Marty, what I quite like about the relationship between the two of you as brothers is in the show, you're the kind of nerdy science guy who, just when I'm thinking, oh, this is just rubbish, you really are stretching my credibility here, you come in and you say, look, we've got to talk through the science here, it's something that you constantly come back to. And I admire both of you for the honesty that you show in admitting that really there isn't a huge amount of evidence to support a lot of the broader conspiracies and theories that are attached to the Oak Island story. But you still constantly come back to the science, don't you, Marty?
Absolutely. Thank you. I view that as a compliment. I am somewhat of a skeptic, and what I can believe in and what I spent my life believing in is hard science. And there has been just enough on Oak Island to keep us going. If there weren't, I would say to Rick, look, we're done. I mean, at least I'm done. But there is plenty, and there's more that has to be figured out. So yes, thank you for that observation. Rick is just as smarter probably, but he is much more of a romantic than I am. And so I think we make a good team.
It's funny,
what he's not saying
here in
though,
Australia, I'm so sorry, I'll let you talk. I apologize.
Just a quick thing. What he's not saying though is if you were to plot, using science, if you were to plot Marty's belief in the Oak Island mystery on a bell-shaped curve, he started on the left side of the bell-shaped curve. He's no longer there. Right, Marty?
That's absolutely true. I'm at least over the top,
It's funny though, because I think the thing that I think attracts a lot of people, including kids who love the show, is your two brothers who had a dream. One of you had a dream after reading the story as a young kid to go out and search for hidden treasure. And it's funny, I've had a very similar experience myself as a journalist here in Australia. There's a lot of talk about Portuguese and Spanish sailors and soldiers visiting Australia even before British settlement and the supposed Dutch discovery of Australia. And there's rumours of Spanish treasure hidden in caves all along the Australian coast. And I've once spent quite a lot of money, of a certain Australian billionaire businessman's money, trying to find this hidden treasure and these hidden Spanish vessels. But the intriguing thing is, just off the coast of Western Australia, there's a beautiful galleon called the Golden Dracht, the Golden Dragon, which was wrecked off the coast of Western Australia. And a lot of gold and treasure was indeed found by amateur divers and recovered. So every now and then, I just want to give you guys some hope. Every now and then, these treasure stories do come true.
Yes, thank you for that. Yes, and I think you put your finger on basically something that exists in human nature. Find somebody who doesn't like a treasure hunt. I don't think they exist. It pulled you in, obviously, and it's got a pretty good hold on us.
Is there ever going to come a time, though? I mean, what are you doing now? You've just finished the 11th series. There's speculation there's going to be a 12th. I mean, some people might suggest you're flogging a dead horse. You haven't found the treasure after 11 episodes, 11 series. What are you going to do? When are you going to call it a day?
We've talked about this.
Yes, we have.
Two criteria. When it becomes not fun anymore, we've looked each other in the eye and said, if this becomes drudgery, not going to do it. And the other one is when we can't advance the ball. When we feel like we've done what we can and we're not advancing the ball, then yes, hand it off to somebody else. It isn't going to go away. There are plenty of people who write us all the time and tell us how we're missing the boat. This is what we should do. So, but there may come a time, and it may be fairly short if we don't figure it out, where we hand it off. Yes, we have to be foolish.
I've got to ask both of you before we go, do you think there is a treasure down below in Oak Island?
Who are you asking?
Both of you.
Marty, you go first, or I'll go first.
Go ahead.
The answer to that is define treasure. You know, do I believe that? Here's what I well and truly believe. I am not a historian of any record at all. However, what I do know, what reading I have done, there's no place in the world where temporal wealth has been, if you accept the engineering that we believe was done on the island, and I do believe that, nowhere has that been exhibited in protecting or burying temporal wealth to this extent, to this degree. Nowhere. Now, they did divert a river to bury a lark's treasure, and then they diverted the river back. That's the story as the story goes. But this is far more complex than that. So I believe that the treasure is less to do with temporal wealth, and it has to do with something else. You have to be, people ask all the time, how could that have been done so long ago? And my response to that is really quite simple. Human beings properly motivated can have and continue to do remarkable things. So answer the why of it. That's more important to me almost than finding the treasure. You figure out why, and you have to answer the W's, who, what, when, where, why, and how. But human beings properly motivated can do remarkable things. And I think a remarkable thing was done on that island. To what end? I cannot say. Is there something underground on Oak Island that was worth their time, their effort, their energy, their intellect? I believe there was. I believe it might still be there.
Marty?
As I said, I'm a lot more mercenary than him. Look, there's gold and silver in the water at abnormal levels. That's science. That's not having to rely on belief or this or that or the other. Until we find the source of those metals, and my definition of treasure is much more simple than Rick. It's conventional, you know. I mean, I just started out looking for gold, silver, jewels, and it's never gone. It's deviated a bit, but that's still what I'm looking for, and I still think there's science that supports that. Yes.
I believe there's something associated with what's there, but it wasn't done just for that.
Well, I can tell you there are millions of people all over the world who will be holding their breath to see what you've found in Series 11. And I'm sure many people will be wishing you good wishes to ensure that you'll hit the mighty dozen. And hopefully at some stage you'll be telling us you've found a treasure chest full of Spanish doubloons, gold and jewels. And I, for one, will be cheering you on. This week, we've got something very special for you. Brandon Fugel, the owner of the extraordinary Skinwalker Ranch. And if you don't know anything about this ranch, 3 hours southeast of Salt Lake City, Utah, USA, there's a 500-acre region of ground, which is probably the most scientifically investigated place on Earth. It's also an alleged paranormal hotspot, seen for all manner of weird, high strangeness, paranormal, anomalous, and UAP UFO activities. Skinwalker Ranch sits in a region known as the Uinta Basin, a territory rich with Native American history and myth. The Skinwalker Ranch name is derived from a shape-shifting character from Navajo tribal folklore. And among the Navajo, skinwalkers are like werewolves, evil witches that can transform themselves into any shape they like. Now, Skinwalker Ranch is actually 400 miles north, I understand, of the Navajo Nation in the territory of the Ute people. But the paranormal suspicions behind the Skinwalker myth are very well respected in that country. Now, my friend George Knapp, journalist from Las Vegas, wrote a brilliant book about this mysterious ranch called Hunt for the Skinwalker. And he tells in his book how soon after European settlers arrived, they started seeing mysterious things in the sky. And it's gone on right through to the present day. There was a family called the Shermans in the early 1990s who reported to local media how they were experiencing all manner of paranormal phenomena, including a ship, some type of craft, hovering over their property the size of a football field. They also reported shooting to no effect a gigantic wolf that was 3 times the size of a normal wolf, and it just loped away, apparently showing no effect from the shots. There were also distressing cattle mutilations, cows found dead with surgically precise excisions, internal organs removed, but no blood and no sign anywhere of human mischief. In 1997, an aerospace entrepreneur, Robert Bigelow, bought the ranch, and he resourced a massive scientific investigation through a body he created called the National Institute for Discovery Science. And in around about 2007, this is actually the origin of the investigations by the Pentagon into what became ATIP or ORSAP, the code-named programs that were essentially investigating not just the paranormal phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch, but a whole range of paranormal and anomalous phenomena. And that prompted what became the New York Times story in 2017. So much of the mystery began at Skinwalker. Now, as it happens, we have Brandon Fugel here today, and not only is he an extraordinarily successful, prominent businessman in the Utah region, he's the chairman of the Collier's investment and real estate firm, he's also somebody who's got an admitted interest in the paranormal, the anomalous, and the weird world of high strangeness. Brandon Fugel, welcome to Reality Check. Can you tell me, sir, what have you adduced in this magnificent TV program, which I think is now coming up to its 5th season, after 5 series of Skinwalker Ranch? What have you found? I think the show is called The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. What can you tell me about the scientific research that you've done at Skinwalker? Are you a believer?
I am not a believer, Ross. I'm an experiencer. I cannot deny that which I have seen with my own eyes, with witnesses at my side, and that which we have hard data evidencing the reality of the phenomena there at Skinwalker Ranch, this most scientifically studied paranormal hotspot on the planet. And it is quite a privilege to be unveiling this coming week on Tuesday on the History Channel, 9 Central, the latest series of discoveries, observations, and events that have taken place over the course of this last year that continue to underscore not only the reality of the phenomena and the fact that we are not alone in the universe, but that there are things happening in our airspace, in our world, that defy our current understanding of physics and reality itself. So we are tackling topics that I believe have been addressed for thousands of years, since the beginning of time. People have asked, where did we come from? Why are we here? Where are we going? Are we alone in the universe? What is the nature of reality? And I believe our scientific investigation at Skinwalker Ranch may actually hold the answers to some of those time-honored questions that have been on people's minds since the beginning.
When I was doing my research for this show, I spoke to one of your esteemed colleagues. I won't say who it was, but he actually said to me, when I asked him, what should I ask you about? He said, ask Brandon if it's real. Ask Brandon if it's real, because all we cop all the time is the accusation that we fake this stuff, that this is all nonsense, that this is fakery, that we're planting stuff, that this is all made up. Is it?
Good question. Absolutely. One of the key points of not only consideration, but key contractual items I have had in place with the History Channel and A&E Network is that nothing can be faked, manipulated, or contrived relative to the documentary series that is unfolding. We are a data-driven investigation. My principal investigator and chief scientist, Eric Bard, often says, we are not led by an inherited narrative, but we are led by the data. And by using the scientific method and a team of multidisciplinary experts and professionals, we are truly documenting the reality of the phenomena in the most dynamic way for the first time and presenting it in a very transparent way to the public.
So, Brendan, let's talk about your experience. As you say, you're not a believer, you're an experiencer. You've seen hard empirical data with your own eyes. What did you see?
Absolutely. I purchased the property from the elusive billionaire, Robert Bigelow, Bigelow Aerospace, back in April of 2016. And I purchased the property as an open-minded skeptic, but one who had never seen a UFO, ghost, orb, or anything of the sort. And I truly believed that there was a natural, prosaic explanation for what had been reported on this property for decades, if not millennia. The first 6 months of my ownership were marked by really no unusual activity that I could observe. I was flying into my helicopter periodically to be briefed by my team as they were documenting the property and studying the property. And every time that I visited, all that I saw was a very peaceful, strikingly beautiful landscape. You know, you have a Red Rock Mesa Plateau that runs the entire expanse of the property with cave systems. You have old pioneer homesteads that are a haunting part of the landscape there. You have waterways that snake through the property. It is a very, very interesting backdrop for this investigation, but I didn't see anything or even feel anything even slightly unusual or out of the ordinary. Well, that all changed for me on October 14th, 2016, when I was hosting some dignitaries, visitors who came to the property, and everything went crazy. We witnessed everything from rapid battery depletion with our smartphones to electromagnetic anomalies, equipment malfunction, even acute medical episodes. One individual who was attending security, a 6'6" hulk of a man, was rendered catatonic in the middle of the visit and experienced what can only be described as missing time. But later that afternoon, on October 14th, as we were traveling back to the security trailer to retrieve our phones after having them charged for several hours, an individual in the back seat right behind me in my open-air Polaris Ranger UTV that we were driving across the property started yelling to stop the vehicle. He was waving his hands in the air. And as I brought the vehicle to an abrupt stop and looked to where he was pointing, all of us saw above the mesa, right in front of us, what can only be described as a flying saucer. It was a 40 to 50 foot long, silver grayish disc-like object that appeared hovering about 100 feet above the Mesa Plateau, which for generations has been referred to as Skinwalker Ridge. That's where the property derives its name. This object, which was appearing very solid, it had a kind of a reflective quality off of one side where the sun appeared to be glinting off of it. Within seconds, changed position in the blink of an eye. Moved 50 feet to the left. Within seconds after that, it dropped to a low hover above the mesa. And much to our astonishment, seconds later, darted to the right and was ultimately gone. And the whole episode lasted about 20 seconds, but left us not only astonished, but changed us. It transformed us from being skeptics to experiencers. And from that moment forward, I devoted the resources, the personnel, and the focus to begin documenting and studying the nature of the phenomena happening at Skinwalker Ranch. I had no intention of ever revealing my identity as the owner. Even after that event, I didn't want any of these topics to distract or undermine my professional activities as chairman of Utah's Colliers International operation. We're the largest commercial real estate firm in the Intermountain West. We represent a lot of Fortune 500 companies, significant institutions, and I did not want my career spanning decades to potentially be undermined by the controversial nature of not only this ranch, but the subject matter, the topics. But as the years passed and we gathered data, drawing from dozens of surveillance cameras and scientific instrumentation monitoring the property, the History Channel and A&E Network and producers reached out to me, and after a year of persistence, I agreed to take a meeting with them, told them that I wasn't really interested in letting cameras behind the fence, but ultimately was persuaded to allow a first ever documentary series effort to come inside the fence, inside the military grade gated fence entrance, to study and document for many months of the year, for 3 to 4 months out of the year, the strange activity, the experiments, and the research being conducted on really what is the most scientifically studied paranormal hotspot on the planet.
Look, I take my hat off to you, to be honest, Brandon, because I, like you, started out a very determined skeptic, thinking that when I wrote my book, I was going to prove that all of this was bunkum. And as I've got sucked further and further down the rabbit hole, I've been waiting for that moment for whenever and if any of this paranormal UAP phenomena shows itself to me. And frankly, it hasn't done it yet. My friends say that it's doing it to keep me skeptical because it needs me as a journalist to keep on being skeptical. So I'm going to be skeptical for a moment. I'm going to ask you, did you get vision? Did you get imagery of what you saw that day? And if so, why not? Because it strikes me so much about Skinwalker. Often you hear these incredible stories. I think Eric Davis, the physicist who's a mutual friend of ours, he's described how he was up one night, late at night, 2:30 in the morning, and he described seeing a portal open in the air. And this gigantic creature, a humanoid creature, steps out of this portal and comes out into the ranch and lopes off. It sounds like something out of a horror movie. But this, I mean, I respect and admire Dr. Davis. He's not somebody who makes things up, and neither are you.
No,
the problem.
I have so much to lose. There is so much liability in even going public with these topics. And to answer your question, our smartphones were unfortunately drained before, prior to the UFO sighting, and we'd put them back at the security trailer to be charged. We were going back to retrieve them when the UFO, when the grayish, silverish object appeared above the Mesa Plateau and proceeded to maneuver for a period of about 20 seconds. But I will note that on our series, we have captured unidentified aerial phenomena and objects of unknown origin on many occasions. In fact, this past year in season 4, we capture what can only be described as a transmedium unidentified aerial object or phenomena that not only dropped down, we captured it descending from the sky via a camera on my helicopter that was conducting an exercise, but it not only entered the mesa from the top, but it exited right below the helicopter. And the whole sequence of events and the spectrum analyzer that was registering strange readings and a host of other things added validity to that event. We've also captured on the surveillance cameras, even the trail cameras that are motion sensor activated on the property, strange objects of unknown origin. You couple with that the fact that acute medical episodes, electromagnetic anomalies, and other equipment malfunctions tend to correlate or accompany these sightings that have been documented. And it leaves a trail of hard data, coming from a series
Whoops.
I'm back with you. Sorry about that. Are we back?
No, I think the electromagnetic anomalies were having a bit of a joke with us. They maybe the
Right.
tricksters followed you all the way back to Salt Lake City, Brandon.
Yeah, I apologize. Well, people speak of what we call the hitchhiker effect, where strange phenomena seems to not only attend these topics, but actually follow people home after they have engaged on the property. And it's real when you have data, when you have countless witnesses, and you have video and other evidence supporting these claims and these observations. It really does underscore the fact that these topics need to be taken more seriously, and the public has a right to know the reality of what is happening, not only in our airspace, but in our world and our reality.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you and I are on the same track on this. And the thing I find bewildering about the debunkers, the splenetic, ranting debunkers who attack you guys, is that as far as I can see, you are doing what they often accuse all of us of not doing, which is gathering empirical data, trying to scientifically assess and measure and analyze and investigate. Does it frustrate you that you're not taken seriously?
It does. It's frustrating, especially when you take into account that we bring in objective, third-party experts. We bring in at every turn third-party subject matter experts, professionals, scientists, engineers that participate in the experiments. I mean, we're talking about the world's leading experts in everything from ground-penetrating radar to LiDAR studies to those who are really the most qualified when it comes to testing the environment and the conditions. We've also brought in a number of different scientific platforms. I mean, even the world's largest drone operator, Sky Elements, and others have come onto the property in service to being part of the experiments and research to help us understand not only what is happening above the property, but potentially below.
Well, that brings me to the next question, which is, it's quite clear, Brian, your colleague and I think your old Mormon friend, Brian Arnold, he's talked about how digging into the property is one of the most dangerous things perceptively that you can do. There was that terrible time when one of your staff suffered a horrible, I think it was Thomas Winterton, your security manager. He suffered a terrible swelling in his head that saw him hospitalized after they began digging into the ground. And I think on another occasion when Travis Taylor was opening a porthole into the ground, something similar happened. He was overcome by some kind of fumes or compounds.
Well, actually, he ended up sustaining radiation burns. He was suddenly exposed to radiation. Yeah, there was radiation, and it ended up going to the hospital. And as you'd mentioned, Thomas Winterton ended up in the hospital for a week with life-threatening illness that remains to this day unexplained. The only explanation that could be provided relative to his injuries that were sustained in connection with his work on the property, some digging activity where he was disturbing the earth, is that the back of his skull was irradiated. And we've had countless other incidents, even cardiac incidents on the property that have unfortunately correlated or coincided with digging activity or other experimental research activity being conducted. So the ranch is not to be taken lightly. We counsel all those who come and visit the property in any capacity, whether it be the scientists, the engineers, the professionals that are participating, that they prepare themselves spiritually. Regardless of whatever religious tradition or not, we ask them to enter the property with the spirit of reverence and humility. For we are dealing with phenomena that is unexplained, that has command over the environment, and obviously based on some of the data and evidence that we have collected, it has the ability to discern your intention or the attitude that one brings. Those who bring an adversarial or a negative attitude to the property often are rendered immobilized, are the most injured. in the course of not only participating on the property, but even just entering the property. So it's important to note that this is a very sensitive scientific investigation that runs year-round, 24/7, 365 days a year. But there is also a liability issue here due to the danger. Those who enter having to sign liability waivers and recognizing that there are certain risks. I will never allow my own children to set foot on this property simply because I know we are dealing with forces, some which appear to be malevolent with negative intent, that are somehow interacting with our environment and our world.
So this is mind-blowing, Brendan. What you are describing to me is a non-human intelligence, aren't you?
Well, we don't know the origin or the agenda associated with the activity at Skinwalker Ranch. We believe, based on the data, that there is a diversity of origins and agendas, that there is most likely not one single point of origin or type of entity or intelligence that we're interacting with. I mean, people ask me all the time, is it aliens? Is it beings from other worlds? Or is it multidimensional or interdimensional phenomena? Or is it spiritual? Is it spiritual in nature, angels and demons of religious and historical tradition? And the best answer I can provide, Ross, is that it is most likely D, all the above. That what we're seeing is really a diversity of agendas and origins that for some reason converge on this property and have made Skinwalker Ranch a center of gravity for studying the phenomenon. Perhaps there's a portal, a stargate, or a wormhole to other worlds or other dimensions on this property. Based on the data, it appears there's something definitely in the environment that is beyond description.
Now, before the audience watching this think that we've both taken leave of our senses and that we've been reading far too many good science fiction novels, I want to explain the significance of a Defense Intelligence Agency organization investigation, which basically began a very thorough investigation into Skinwalker Ranch and associated paranormal phenomena. I think back in 2007, Senator Harry Reid, with the support of a couple of other colleagues in the Senate, he helped secure some funding through the Defense Intelligence Agency and then through the Pentagon for what became known as, I think, the ORSAP program. The splenetic ranting debunkers tie themselves up in knots trying to prove that this was all nonsense. But the simple fact is there was a Defense Intelligence Agency program funded millions of dollars to investigate this phenomena. And the story I love most of all is Jim Lakatsky. I think you've met him since, but he was a super sort of senior physicist inside the Department of Defense. He's brought out to the ranch. And in George Knapp's book, he describes how this skeptic was demonstrated within seconds of his arrival, something equivalent to the kind of tubular bells three-dimensional image that appears on Mike Oldfield's album, the Tubular Bells album. It manifested itself in front of him in the security room at Skinwalker. Do you know this story and do you believe it?
Yeah, the event actually occurred in the ranch house. Not at the security room. It was actually in the ranch house, or what we call Homestead 1. I am familiar with the account. In fact, we've had others that have observed strange phenomena in that same place or region of that old historic structure that is well over 100 years old on the property. The fact that this property was part of a Pentagon-funded black budget program with tens of millions of dollars focused on the potential national security implications and the reality of the high frequency of UFO or UAP sightings coupled with bizarre cattle mutilation activity and other high strangeness, I think really does differentiate not only this effort and this location from others for whatever reason, but I think it really helps underscore the seriousness and reality of these things.
A few weeks ago on Reality Check, we interviewed a theologist, Paul Thigpen, and the wonderful Congressman Tim Burchett. And Tim volunteered to us. We were talking about religion, and we were talking about the possibility that what the phenomenon is may in fact be, is it wrong to talk about angels and demons? And I know you follow the Latter-day Saint Church, the Mormon Church, and
Sure.
I was fascinated. You had me reading Mormon scripture, Brandon. I've become a convert. I've started reading Mormon scripture. And in the Latter-day Saint scripture, the prophet Moses has a vision of the cosmos, and God tells him, quote, "Worlds without number have I created, and I also created them for mine own purpose. And by the Son I created them, which is mine only begotten. But only an account of this earth and the inhabitants thereof give I unto you. For behold, there are many worlds that have passed away by the word of my power, and there are many that now stand, and innumerable are they unto man." So the Mormon religion, the Church of Latter-day Saints, clearly contemplates an acceptance of other non-human intelligences. True?
Yeah, sure. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which I belong to, and I had the privilege of serving as a missionary for my faith back in 1992 to 94, between the ages of 19 to 21, is unique in that it teaches that and acknowledges that there are worlds without number, that we are not alone in the universe. And I believe that it also advances that we are part of a divinely constructed, intelligently designed reality. And with Jesus Christ and the gospel of Jesus Christ being the focus and the centerpiece of our faith, coupled with a cosmic worldview, I believe that it offers a clear roadmap for understanding the purpose of life and the nature of our existence. And people have asked me, based on your faith, what is the purpose of life? Well, in our scripture, it states, or God states, "This is my work and my glory to bring to pass the immortality and eternal life of man." And what we are seeing here at Skinwalker Ranch also delves into topics involving consciousness, the nature of consciousness, and whether there is something much more complex as far as our existence, and how that may play out in the environment at Skinwalker Ranch.
I don't think it's any coincidence, is it, that after the National Institute of Discovery Science, Robert Bigelow, the predecessor owner of Skinwalker Ranch, he's now funding incredible research into consciousness, isn't he?
Yeah, millions of dollars. In fact, he has established essentially an endowment to award millions of dollars to those who are conducting groundbreaking research into the afterlife and really into the nature of consciousness itself. That's probably a key indicator as far as where some of these topics go in trying to understand our place in the universe and really this planet. The fact that we appear to be monitored by beings, by intelligence of unknown origin that has command over space, time, has command over technology and equipment. I mean, we've seen at Skinwalker Ranch closed, very, very complex scientific devices and computing systems manipulated instantaneously, closed systems that have been malfunctioning and also completely reprogrammed, resulting in some very, very disturbing events on the property. And everything from astronomers, we had the Salt Lake Astronomical Society professionals out, as well as I mentioned earlier, the largest drone operator in the world, which is Sky Elements, that has deployed more drones, instrumented drones, in service to understanding what is happening above the property. And you're going to see, as the season unfolds, and we reveal the most recent events at Skinwalker Ranch in season 5 of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, starting this next week. Some of the most, I think, terrifying incidents that have ever been reported, if not documented, and some new insights and discoveries.
Well, can I ask you this then, Brandon? I've spoken to people who've worked at the ranch who've described how people who've been in combat, people who've seen death, people who've seen the darker side of humanity, they're often the people that the phenomenon latches onto. You talked about the hitchhiker effect. And there's one guy in particular, I won't name him to respect his privacy, but he describes how he was followed home by some kind of paranormal hitchhiker. And his wife and family witnessed what could only be described as a kind of a werewolf creature in the front garden, looking up at the house. It does beg the question to me, is this phenomenon something that we should be investigating? I can hear in my head religious people, Tim Burchett might be one of them, saying these are demons, these are evil. Has it ever crossed your mind that you might be dealing with something that's malevolent, evil, that doesn't want to be investigated?
Assigning intent and assigning cause to these events as they unfold is difficult. I believe that science will ultimately give us the answers using the scientific method, and following that method and being led by the data and not just stories or an inherited narrative will be an important part of getting to the truth, and really focusing on the truth and on really gathering the reality of all of the collective data that has been assembled on this property. I mean, a lot of people who preceded me have documented and recorded activity out in the Uinta Basin and even this property. We brought in retired law enforcement, the former deputy sheriff who responded to events of bizarre cattle mutilations and even UFO activity on this particular property going back in the 1980s. This is preceding the Shermans who sold it to Robert Bigelow. I mean, this is back when this property wasn't on anyone's radar. Wasn't the topic of any news story, but was experiencing and reporting strange activity that continues to this day. And we consider it a privilege to be involved with this. I consider my ownership a stewardship. I don't really look at myself as the owner, but rather the steward of this property. I believe I've been given a responsibility to conduct myself and to direct my team to address these topics with reverence, with the right type of professionalism and approach. And I believe that that the public has a right to know, and that we as human beings on this planet are ready to explore the next frontier. And the next frontier, I believe, is really identifying and understanding the nature of reality of it itself, and whether we truly are alone in the universe. What is our role in the cosmos?
Now, Brandon, you're very kind with your time, and I'm really keen to keep you on just for a couple more questions if possible. So please tell me if you do have to bolt.
No, but fire away.
One thing I'm really interested in drawing you on is eminent domain. One of the arguments that came up during the debate about the Schumer legislation in Congress last year, one of the reasons why there was opposition to the Schumer legislation that would have allowed for greater protection for people coming forward, whistleblowers coming forward with evidence of an alleged legacy retrieval reverse engineering program. One of the objections that came up was that the legislation imposed eminent domain. And I know one of your colleagues, Travis Taylor, has been quite outspoken in expressing his opposition to the eminent domain. And he kind of got slapped down about it, but the lawyer in me kind of agrees with him, to be perfectly honest. I found it worrying that the state felt that it had the right to confiscate any technology that might have been recovered. And I guess this would include Skinwalker Ranch as well, because
Sure. Well,
presumably
any evidence. Yeah, that would include any evidence or data. And I don't think people understand the consequences of giving that much power and overreach to government authorities to just immediately sweep in. I believe that our best chance of seeing real disclosure and advancement relative to these frontier topics is going to come from the private sector, because for decades, I mean, for likely the last 70, 80 years, there has been an active disinformation campaign to discredit those who've been involved with these topics. And I believe that the truth associated with these topics, especially or specifically within government channels, within the public sector, I don't believe any of that will come forward, regardless of congressional hearings, FOIA requests, or anything of the sort. I believe that the private sector has the best chance of bringing this forward, and I'd hate to see some overreaching, over-aggressive, eminent domain clause that would render a privately funded investigation like mine not only completely terminated, but any evidence associated with that investigation to be sequestered off into some program that will never see the light of day. We've already heard numerous accounts where that has occurred in the past.
Brandon, can I ask you about your opinions of the Arrow historical review report that came down a few weeks ago, which essentially debunked all of this, basically saying there's no evidence, and it leads the reader to the suggestion that all of the people, and we're talking here about prominent scientists like Dr. Eric Davis, Dr. Travis Taylor, people like Jay Stratton, Jim Lakatsky, all of Hal Puthoff, all of the people who at different times have either had dealings with Skinwalker Ranch or taken an interest in the phenomenon associated with it. What do you say to the notion that is being pushed, I think, quite mischievously by the Pentagon, by the Arrow office, through the auspices of Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, pushing this line that this is just a whimsy, that these are people who should not be taken seriously, that they've misled us, led us by the nose into spending millions of dollars of taxpayers' money in what is some kind of counterintelligence disinformation operation?
It's nonsense. They debunked one thing. I mean, the report debunked nothing. It completely avoided and dismissed countless events and pieces of evidence that have been amassed over decades. It completely ignores using the scientific method and looking at those events that have occurred repeatedly, those reports that have been brought forward. I mean, how they can and any report can simply dismiss the testimony of decorated fighter pilots, law enforcement, and others it's amusing to me, but it's no surprise. It shouldn't come as any surprise. As I was mentioning earlier, if anyone believes that disclosure is going to come through those channels, they are ignorant, because the military-industrial complex and forces that have been behind suppressing the evidence relative to the reality of the phenomena have been busy at work for a long time, and they have everything to lose. There is nothing to be gained by any of those entities by having these things disclosed to the general public. I don't believe that the secret keepers and those who profit from controlling material related to these topics have any motivation whatsoever. And I think that again, the best hope is the private sector, which has always been the case. I mean, it's not that you see most cutting edge innovation or big thinking coming from the government. When did we ever think that our greatest discoveries would come through the federal government or the answers? I think even though it plays an important role, we have to look other places, unfortunately.
I know in the series, you sometimes make reference to the idea that you are being observed, that it appears that there are sometimes defense military helicopters taking a close interest in the site. Have you had anyone from government, military, defense aerospace intimidate you, threaten you,
Well,
try and shut you down?
It isn't just an idea or speculation. It's an absolute fact that we've experienced covert military activity in conjunction with our experiments and research over the property. When you have a Black Hawk helicopter, an unmarked Black Hawk helicopter that is not transponding, that descends and hovers right over the property at low altitude, while we have a guidance in effect because of rocketry and other things that we have clearance in the area to conduct, that would divert any air traffic to other locations. But we see for example, Black Hawk helicopters, Army Chinook special ops helicopters, other military aircraft that are monitoring us. I would say that it's confirmation that there's something going on here, that there are many people that are interested and entities that are interested in what is happening at Skinwalker Ranch, which gives us some cause for pause. I mean, there are members of my team that are very concerned about the monitoring activity that we have observed and we have documented. But we remain vigilant, and we're not going to be intimidated. We're certainly not going to stop or dial down our investigation. We are more dedicated than ever, especially based on the events that have occurred the last year that we are now going public with for the first time. I think the public is going to be shocked by what we are about to unveil, not only because of the data and the evidence, but also some of the events that were truly disturbing, that involve danger, that without giving away anything, were quite harrowing. So I'm very excited to unveil transparently what we've been documenting, what we've been experiencing at Skinwalker Ranch. We explore regions of that property that have never been touched or explored, and we've had some surprising insights as a result. So we're looking forward to the days ahead, and I look forward to a follow-up conversation to answer any questions as these events unfold.
Well, I think all of us are cheering you on and hoping that you can provide some really good scientific data that helps prove and validate this phenomenon. The one thing I am skeptical about, though, I mean, I agree with you that it has to come from the private sector. I think government is hopeless. I think there's very little prospect of any positive affirmation from government about what this really is. But you're quite clear. Just before we go, I want to pin you down on one thing. You're quite clear that you believe there's been an ongoing government cover-up and disinformation. That's not some wacky conspiracy theory. You're seeing it, you've experienced it, you think it's real. Why? Yeah, why not? Why can't Joe Biden come out and just say, look, ladies and gentlemen, we know what's happening at Skinwalker Ranch is real. We know there is a non-human intelligence. Why not just come out and admit it?
I believe that even our own elected officials are rendered helpless because they don't have a, quote, need to know, unquote. Even our presidents in this day and age don't have a need to know and do not have access to the material and the data relative to these topics. Anyone who does their due diligence and thoughtfully reviews all of the historical data that has been pulled together, and there are a lot of people, a lot of historians, a lot of researchers that have done the heavy lifting that have the receipts that have been able to document the reality of not only government involvement and cover up, but the fact that it continues to this day, that there is an active effort to discredit those, whether they be pilots, military personnel, law enforcement. I mean, there is an active effort to, I believe, suppress a lot of this information. I mean, I've met with countless pilots that have had experiences, firsthand experiences relative to UFO activity in our airspace that are terrified to go public because they don't want to lose their jobs. They don't want to come under any scrutiny. There is such a negative stigma associated with these topics, and it's all been programmed. It's all part of a very methodical, well-crafted, and well-funded disinformation campaign that has involved the media and really even members of the private sector for a very, very long time.
Well, I, for one, sir, applaud your courage, especially from your position in business as a prominent businessman with Colliers International, dealing with corporate clients. Clearly, it's not damaging your business. In fact, I suspect it's elevating your profile, and hopefully, in the long run, it's going to lead to some kind of vindication. Brandon Fugal, thank you so much for speaking to Reality Check, and we're looking forward to this new series of the show and hoping that we get some fascinating adventures along the way.
Look forward to unveiling our discoveries and appreciate your support. Look forward to the days ahead. Take care.
Good to talk to you, sir. Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Brandon Fugal as much as I did. It's intriguing that a businessman like him, with the risks that he's taking with his reputation, is putting his reputation on the line to do what he's doing, which is, after all, good data-driven, empirical scientific investigation. Good on him for doing it. I can only applaud. Now, we, of course, have many, many viewer questions, and I can never answer all of them. But there are a lot of questions today that I'd like to respond to. Here's one. Why the footage is always so short? The man describes the objects hovering above the base. This is Jonathan Butner. This is all in reference to Jonathan Butner, the witness we interviewed for Reality Check last week, talking about what he saw all over Langley Air Force Base. Anomalous orange orb objects hovering over one of our most sensitive Air Force bases on the eastern coast of the US. And this gentleman asks, why the footage is always so short? The man describes the objects hovering above the base, yet the constantly repeating video is showing the object moving to the left, ... I get the point of the viewer. The simple fact is, as Brandon Fugal has just told us, often in the emotional circumstances of seeing one of these objects, a lot of people, I've noticed this, a lot of experiences say it takes a while for them to even think about picking up a camera. Now, Jonathan Butner, when he took the images that he did take, he took a lot more than he was giving us, and I've got a large amount of extra vision, and maybe we should have run some of it a bit longer. There was longer vision that was provided to us. The problem is, let's be honest about it, mobile phone cameras are crap. They're not very good at recording imagery. So next time anyone's looking at Langley Air Force Base, please take a FLIR infrared camera. They're only 150, 200 grand, and make sure that you get high quality, high resolution images for our viewers. I completely agree with you. I'm only being sarcastic. It's very, very important that we do start trying to monitor these bases in a much more methodical way, because since that story aired, I've had dozens of emails from people telling me about other Air Force bases, including Nellis Air Force Base, another very important US Air Force base where these exact same objects are being seen by witnesses, and they're in touch with me at the moment. Next question. Even though this isn't an admission of a retrieval, reading between the lines, an event must have occurred to justify the work of putting a program together and allocating a budget. And I think that's in reference to the recent Kona Blue revelations. Kona Blue are documents. It's not a Hyundai. In Australia, a Kona is a Hyundai car. So it's quite funny when people start talking about Kona Blue, we immediately start thinking about Hyundais. But no, Kona Blue was a top secret code name for a proposed special access program, which was going to be a secret program involved in researching and monitoring anomalous phenomena, including UAPs, UFOs. And look, the simple fact is that this question is suggesting that there is an admission of a retrieval. No, it's not. I think it has to be clearly stated that Kona Blue never happened. It got kiboshed. Somebody, probably the Department of Defense, intervened. The Department of Homeland Security was taking extremely seriously the possibility that there were anomalous phenomena. They were approached by people, I suspect Jim Lukatsky from the DIA. I'm not sure for certain, but they were approached by people and they took it very, very seriously. There was a briefing given in a skiff and frankly, they were convinced enough to consider allocating the money. But for some reason, the program got axed. Now, as Brandon Fugle's just told us, we really shouldn't be holding our breath waiting for government to do much more funding of this kind of research. There are very clever scientists out there, and let's be honest about it, most of them are in the private sector. That's where the money is. Let's use those scientists. Let's not be shy about it. Ross, what happened with those whistleblowers you personally know in these programs that you talked about 11 months ago, the ones that you've said have been hands-on with alien crafts? When will you bring one of these people on the show? Watch this space. I'm afraid, guys, you're just going to have to be patient. As I keep on saying, yes, there are whistleblowers, and yes, there are people going through the Defence Office pre-publication security review process, and yes, hopefully, at some stage, these people will have the courage to feel okay about coming forward. But when you see the disgraceful way that the Defence Department has tried to shaft any effort to take this seriously, can you blame whistleblowers for being nervous about coming forward? When you see the way that David Grush has been the subject of quite disgraceful attacks on his credibility, on his reputation, on his mental state, it's just appalling. I don't blame whistleblowers for being scared about coming forward. And in fact, sometimes I've actually discouraged people from doing it because you know they're going to get shafted. You know that they're going to lose their job. I've encouraged people to speak to Senate investigators, to House investigators, to give their evidence in confidence to the Congress. Frankly, that doesn't seem to be going anywhere at the moment. But what I can tell you, without giving away too much, is Congress is taking this very seriously, a lot more seriously than is being publicly disclosed. There is a willingness to engage. They want to see the evidence. And if you are a whistleblower, feel free about approaching me. I'm very happy to pass you on to the right people. And hopefully, at some stage, just to appease our angry viewer, at some stage, hopefully, these whistleblowers will feel okay about coming forward. But I do want to caution, this isn't entertainment. This isn't some reality show making up for your entertainment. These are courageous public servants who are making a very hard decision about whether they come forward to reveal a secret about what I believe is the biggest story in human history. And frankly, I don't give a flying fig if people think it's all nonsense, if they try and dismiss it and say it's all BS. Go and have a rant about it. Sit in a corner and rant and steam and fume. We're going to keep on digging, and we're going to get the answers. Thank you so much for joining me again on Reality Check. I hope you enjoyed Brandon Fugle. See you next week.